Hey, what's up? Thanks for listening to the Grow Your Life podcast. I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited to talk today about a breakthrough that I had recently. It's actually just a couple of hours ago, but it's something that I got to, it sounds funny saying that, but it's something that I have had breakthroughs in constantly and consistently over my life. And I remembered something that I just always end up going back to, and that I need to remind myself of. I need to plaster it on the wall for. And I hope that this encourages you when I share this breakthrough with you that I had, that it might encourage you as well to have the same breakthrough. You know, in life, we have stuff that happens. Things don't go how we want them to. If you lived on planet Earth, you know that you could do all the right things, and yet stuff won't work out how we wish they did. And that can be devastating. It can suck. But here's the thing. We can't let what happened to us define us and our future and where we're going and what we're doing. And that's not to negate or to say that it didn't happen or that it didn't hurt or that it wasn't hard. And that's the key. Accept that. But don't blame it. Don't play the victim. Don't walk in that victim mentality. Gosh, I was walking in a victim mentality for so long. What is a victim mentality? Again, it's saying, well, I can't do what I want to do because they or that thing, the algorithm doesn't work how I want it to, or those people aren't showing up how I want, or Facebook shut me down. And I see people, they do this all the time, or my wife demands this of me, or my kids are acting this way, and we end up blaming everything that's around us for why we're not experiencing the life that we want to live, instead of saying, okay, you know what, taking ownership. I created this life, I created this world, this is the world that I want to live in, and not playing the victim, saying that all this stuff is happening to hurt us, but rather realizing that it's actually for our benefit, which can be hard to say. It's like, that's a difficult thing to say. We're like, okay, well, no, it's not for my benefit that this happened. But in the long term, it is, if you can let it be a teacher to you. And number two is realizing that how everything is going in your life right now is because of a series of choices that you made. It's a series of events that you made. And can we beat ourselves up for that? Can we feel like we're I'm so ashamed and fall flat on our face, or we become upset because people aren't responding how we quote unquote need them to or want them to? Again, I've done this and I've experienced this myself. And it's not pretty. It's not healthy. And it's not a way to live life. And so I want to encourage you. You probably got some big goals. If you're like me, you got a lot of big stuff that you want to do. You got stuff that you want to accomplish. Break it down into smaller tasks, number one, and do step by step. And then figure out which of those steps is taking you longer. This is one of the biggest breakthrough strategies that I use all the time as I look at, of the big picture, how does it break down to smaller steps? And then of those smaller steps, which ones am I taking the longest on? What am I stuck on? What do I feel the resistance around? So then when you can identify one or two areas where you have resistance, and listen, if you're like me, you probably got a lot more than one or two. Here's one of the things you want to be careful of. Don't try to tackle all of those things at once. Just identify the one that really rises up to the surface the most, that you notice in every part of your life. So start to develop your pattern recognition muscles, because in business you need to know how to do pattern recognition. But what you can do is you can identify a pattern of how we're behaving over here, how that's affecting us over here. We can start to find and identify, okay, where that root is. For me, I found a pattern of behavior that I didn't like for the last 2 months. Yeah, 2 months. It was it started at the end of June, and I'm just like, why is this happening? Why does this keep happening? And I know a series of events that took place at the beginning, middle, and end of June. And I was blaming those things for why things were happening in a certain way for me. Now, here's the cool part about it. Right now, as of today, I can look back at success is a lagging indicator of the actions that we take. And I can look back at what I'm doing today, and I can see the trajectory of what's happening in my life going forward. It's amazing. I can look back, though, for the last 2 months, 6 months, and I can see why maybe there was a certain struggle as far as that goes. You know, my wife, she's about to give birth here very soon. And that's shaken our life up. And so I've had to get real, serious about what is the life we want to live, how do we envision it, and then start working in building and creating that life. And it comes from not blaming everything around us. One of the biggest things I was blaming is my wife and my kids for not having the kind of life or business that I wanted. Now this sounds crazy, but hear me out. I found myself dialoguing that there was a version of how I was building my business before my son was born. And now for the last 2 years, I've not been able to build my business in that way. I'll tell you this, moving forward, I'm going to be able to, because I know exactly why that is and what I need to do differently. It's just a different way of building it. That's it. And so what we got to do is we got to learn to adapt. We got to learn to go with the flow of the change in the situations. So no matter what situation life throws at you, learn to be adaptable instead of being like, oh, again, the other shoe dropped and it just, nothing goes my way. You know, I hear people all the time when I'm coaching them. They say this. They use this. They speak out of their mouth against their life negatively. Things don't go how I want them to. Things don't go how I need them to. Facebook shut me down. Facebook blocked me. The algorithm didn't do what I needed it to. And we end up blaming the stuff that we're experiencing. You know, I used to teach this to people, and they would get really offended by what I just said. They're like, you have no empathy, Jeremiah, for anybody's situation. I'm like, actually, the problem is I probably have way too much empathy for it. And unfortunately, when I dive way too deep and cross into sympathy, I start thinking and operating in a way that is not healthy. Because it's not healthy to play the victim. It's not healthy to play. And when I say play, it's living your life as somebody who is powerless. We have so much more power in our pinky finger than we ever imagined. You have so much more power than you could ever possibly imagine. But do you believe that? I'll tell you this. When you can learn to listen to your inner voice, what does that look like? That means calming the nervous system down. That means bringing the anxiety down, learning how to control the internal anxiousness. And this can be a journey, and it's not easy, but it's worth it to learn how to bring your anxiousness down. And I'll tell you, I look back at, because I had been in therapy for 2.5 years. Full transparency, now I actually have been using Chat GPT. I'll tell it to act as if it's a therapist trained in internal family systems and CBT. And is it as good as a therapist? No. But what I'm doing is I'm training my mind, and I'm using this tool on demand. Anytime something comes up, I can talk about it with the AI, and I find it's extremely helpful. I find there's a huge benefit. I find most of my breakthroughs don't come from those sessions, but they come afterwards when I consider what I'm going through. Like tonight, I was thinking about, I've been blaming my wife and my son again for why my business isn't where I would want it to. Because I'm like, I would be able to do this, and I'd be able to do this, and I'd be able to do this. Yeah. Well, I can still do those things, but are the consequences what I want right now? Well, no. Is the life that I have right now with my family the life that I'm wanting? Well, yes. Okay, great. And our life is incredible right now. We're making more money than we ever made in our life. But I know there's more. And I know there's a greater level. And I know there's a new place that I want to go. I was just talking to a friend of mine today, and I had asked him, I actually felt it inside of me to call him. I felt, you should call this friend. You should ask him. And this is a friend who's massively gone from where we were working together a couple years ago to major levels of success beyond. And I just asked him, I said, hey, what's the biggest shift that's happened for you? And he literally just reminded me of something that I knew already, that was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. And the biggest shift was to not just see the reality that you want, but to start to be the person that is experiencing those things, and then to start to map it out and be intentional with the things that you want in your life. And then he said this, and it's a bit of more of a spiritual term, but he said to service the altar that got you to where you want to be, to where you are. That's what he said. Now, what does that mean? Let's unpack that. That means doing the things that got you to where you are and continuing to do those things. For him, it was just massive amounts of prayer. For me, I can look back at, gosh, prayer is a huge one for me, of course. It is. But there's other little habits too, because once I can hear my inner voice, God's voice, and I believe that me and God become interconnected together, my intuition, my Holy Spirit starts to hear. And I say intuition and Holy Spirit, they're not the same thing, but they work in tandem. That's how I see it. They work together. I find intuition to be kind of like my part, and then I think there's a Holy Spirit, a higher power, a source, God, that we can connect with and hear from. I'm not here to preach, but I think everybody can. I know a lot of people that didn't believe in that for the longest time, and then they went through a lot of similar experiences like I have. I did not believe that for the longest time. The longest time I didn't think that God could talk to me that way, and now I know that he can. You got to remember who you are. You got to remember your power, and you got to realize you're not powerless. Stuff happens. Things don't go how we want them to. Things don't turn out how we want them to all the time. That's okay. It's okay. It is. It's going to be okay. It's going to work out. It's going to come together. And when you can start to walk in that hope and that favor and that clarity, your actions will follow in a way that turns your life around. And you will start to notice synchronicities that happen. Those are kind of cool. You will start to experience changes in your life. And I think what ends up happening is we end up literally shifting the atmosphere around us, and we start attracting more of the life that we were meant to live. It's not just what we want. It's, by the way, what we want might not be healthy for us, but it's what we were meant for. And that's a big one. And I know some of you know that there's a difference between what you want, how you thought it was going to come in. How many of y'all have had a dream and a desire in your life, and it didn't come in through the way that you thought it would? I have so many of those. And so now for me, like when things don't go how I want them to, or things don't work out, I start to get excited. And that's a mindset to get into. That will change your life, to start to get excited when things get a little chaotic, when things don't necessarily work out the way you wish. I had some situations today that happened. Incredible, weird situations. But you know what? They didn't throw us off. They didn't define us in a certain way. They didn't change my wife and mine's faith, because we know where we're going. and we're trusting the process, and we're trusting that God's going to direct our footsteps. We're not afraid, and we're going to take risks, and we're going to step out, and we're going to start to do the thing that we know that we need to do. And we're not just going to stop there. We're going to keep doing the thing over and over again. We can think about doing it, but actually doing it, actually stepping up, actually taking action, that's what produces the results that we want in our life. And so listen, if you're listening to this podcast right now, I do this podcast every single week. You'll notice that some of the episodes got a different vibe all the time. Some of y'all, if you've listened to all my episodes, you can track where I'm at mentally and emotionally based on how certain trainings I do are. You can accomplish anything that you want in your life. And it doesn't have to be hard. And when we can stop blaming everything around us, when we can stop playing the victim to all of our situations, I can sit here recording this podcast and play the victim to all my listeners. Well, I'm not going to say this because this might piss somebody off. I'm not going to say this because they might not like it. Okay, who cares? That person's never going to listen to it anyways. Why am I concerned about that? And just keep speaking the truth, how I know it. If this has helped you in some way, please share this episode with somebody. Please don't just hold this back to yourself. And if you're a coach, course creator, trainer, I'd love to work with you in our accelerator program to help you dial in your messaging, your niche, your sales, your advertising, your offers, and all of that to help you have consistent clarity, maximize your impact, huge cash flow, and start to bring things together so that you can have the financial and time freedom that you want. That's what we do every single week with our clients in our accelerator program, and I want to help you with that as well. All right, this has been the Grow Your Life podcast. Talk soon. We're going.